Mustard seed trade breakdown, condiments, oil demand, supply shock and market entry. This video is based on the Merit Gateway Value Chain Report on mustard seed. The goal is not to treat mustard seed as a small spice category. The goal is to understand how one raw agricultural commodity connects condiment manufacturing, edible oil demand, food security, climate risk, and global sourcing strategy. Under HS 120750, the product is mustard seed, whether or not broken. That sounds simple, but the code hides a lot of commercial complexity. It covers the raw seed used for sowing, condiment production, oil extraction, direct spice use, and other primary uses. But it does not cover prepared mustard, mustard flour and meal, mustard oil, or mustard cake once those products move into other chapters of the harmonized system. That distinction matters. If we are analyzing HS 120750, we are analyzing the raw or semi-processed seed before it becomes prepared mustard on a shelf, oil in a bottle, or residual cake used in feed. The value chain starts with a small seed, but the market behind it is much larger than the seed itself. What is mustard seed? Mustard seed comes from plants in the Brassicaceae family, the same broad family that includes crops such as rapeseed, canola, cabbage, and broccoli. The report identifies three principal commercial types. Yellow or white mustard, Sinapis alba, is the mildest type. It is strongly associated with North American and European prepared mustard, especially the familiar yellow condiment. Its mucilage content also makes it useful as a thickener and emulsifier. Brown or Indian mustard, Brassica juncea, is more pungent. It is important in South Asian and Chinese cuisines, and it is also central to European-style mustards, including Dijon-type formulations. Because of its oil content, brown mustard is also important for mustard oil markets. Black mustard, Brassica nigra, is the most pungent, but it is less important in large-scale commercial trade because the crop is harder to harvest mechanically. It remains relevant in niche and regional uses, especially where its intense flavor is valued. One useful detail from the report is that the heat of mustard is not fully present in the whole seed. It appears when crushed or ground seed meets liquid. The enzyme myrosinase acts on glucosinolates and produces the sharp compounds that give mustard its bite. In trade terms, this means the buyer is not only buying a seed. The buyer is buying flavor potential, oil potential, processing behavior, and quality consistency. Why demand exists? Demand for mustard seed comes from several different markets at once. In North America and Europe, one of the largest value drivers is condiment production. Food processors need reliable supplies of seed for prepared mustard, mustard flour, sauces, dressings, marinades, pickles, and other food products. For those buyers, mustard seed is a core ingredient. In the short term, demand is not very flexible, because a prepared mustard manufacturer cannot simply remove the seed from the formulation without changing the product. In South Asia, the demand story is different. In markets such as Nepal and Bangladesh, mustard seed is closely tied to edible oil. Mustard oil is a staple cooking medium, deeply connected to cuisine and daily consumption. So the same HS code serves very different demand systems. In one market, mustard seed is a condiment ingredient. In another market, it is a raw material for oil crushing. There are also spice, health, specialty, and organic niches. Whole seeds are used in cooking. Ground seed becomes mustard flour. Certified organic or specialty seed can serve higher value health food and artisanal channels. But the central lesson is that mustard seed demand is split by end use. Condiment, oil, spice, sowing, feed-linked co-products, and value-added processing. From field to final consumer. The chain begins in the field. Mustard is a cool season crop. The report describes it as suited to temperate conditions and sensitive to high temperatures during flowering and seed filling. It is more drought-tolerant than some oil seeds, such as canola, but it still depends on adequate moisture during germination and early growth. Geography matters because production is concentrated in specific climates and farming systems. Canada has historically been the anchor of the global export system, especially through large-scale mechanized farming in prairie provinces such as Saskatchewan and Alberta. Russia and the Black Sea region have become more important. India is a major producer and consumer, especially for brown mustard. Other countries matter either as regional suppliers, processors, or trade hubs. After harvest, the seed moves through cleaning and grading. Buyers care about purity, moisture content, damaged seeds, admixture, oil content, and variety. Moisture is especially important because it affects storage stability and mold risk. Purity matters because foreign material and admixture can create processing problems and buyer claims. Then the chain splits. Some seed moves into condiment production. Some moves into milling and dehulling. Some is crushed for oil. Some becomes meal or cake after oil extraction. Some is traded as whole seed for culinary use. By the time the final consumer sees the product, it may appear as prepared mustard, mustard oil, spice blends, pickles, sauces, marinades, or a processed food ingredient. The consumer sees a simple product. The trader sees variety, moisture, purity, origin, logistics, contracts, price risk, and compliance. Global trade signal. The report describes the global mustard seed market as mature but highly sensitive to supply shocks. Export quantity has not shown smooth long-term growth. Instead, it has moved in cycles, usually within a broad annual range of roughly 350,000 to 550,000 tons in the long-term view. That stability broke during the 2021 and 2022 supply shock. After exports of more than 521,000 tons in 2020, global export volume fell to about 367,000 tons in 2021, and then to about 287,000 tons in 2022. The report links this mainly to severe drought in Western Canada, historically the world's dominant mustard seed export region. This is the key story. Quantity fell, but value exploded. The report says global export value reached an unprecedented peak of approximately $750 million in 2022. That was not because the world suddenly consumed much more mustard seed. It happened because buyers competed for a reduced supply. The implied unit value changed dramatically. In the mid-2000s, the average export price per ton was around $400 to $500. By the early 2010s, it had moved into the $700 to $800 range. At the peak of the 2022 crisis, the average unit value rose above $2,600 per ton. In 2023, export value fell back to around $500 million as supply started to recover, but the unit value remained historically high, around $1,400 per ton. That tells us the market did not simply return to the old normal. Mustard seed moved into a higher risk, higher cost environment. Import demand and price inelasticity. The import side confirms the same story. Before the shock, global import value generally moved around $200 million to $300 million. In 2022, import value peaked above $450 million even though volumes were constrained. This is important because it shows price inelasticity. Food processors and oil crushers still needed supply. A condiment factory cannot pause production easily. An oil mill in an import-dependent market cannot ignore household demand. So buyers absorbed higher prices to keep operations running. The report's implication is clear. Mustard seed procurement is not just a buying function. It is a risk management function. Buyers need diversified origins, better contracting, quality control, and contingency plans for climate-related disruptions. Top exporters. The long-term export story starts with Canada. For most of the past 2 decades, Canada was the structural center of the global mustard seed export market. Its scale, mechanized production, grading system, logistics, and export infrastructure made it the default supplier for processors in the United States, Europe, and Asia. But the 2021 drought exposed a weakness in that structure. When Canadian supply fell sharply, the global market had to find alternatives quickly. Russia is the second major story. The report describes the Russian Federation as rising from a minor player to a major exporter, especially over the last 5 to 7 years. Russia's growth, combined with the Canadian supply shock, moved the market from a near unipolar structure to a more bipolar or multipolar structure. India also became more important during the disruption. Traditionally, India is a large producer and consumer, with exports depending heavily on domestic surpluses and regional demand. But during the recent shortage, India expanded its export role, especially in brown mustard. Germany appears differently. It is not simply a production story. Its role is tied to processing, logistics, and re-export inside Europe. Germany's export position partly reflects the movement of imported seed through a sophisticated European food and trading system. The United States is also in the exporter set, but with a different role. It produces mustard in states such as North Dakota and Montana, but it is also one of the largest importers. That means the U.S. is not a pure supply story. It is a production, processing, and demand story at the same time. So the top exporter lesson is not just who ships the most tons. It is about commercial role. Canada is the historic anchor. Russia is the rising alternative. India is a producer-consumer with surplus-driven export potential. Germany is a European processor and hub. The United States is both producer and major demand engine. Top importers. The import story is more stable than the export story. The United States is the world's leading importer. The report states that the U.S. imported about $93 million worth of mustard seed in 2023, representing about 24% of total global imports. This demand is tied to a large food processing industry that produces prepared mustard, sauces, dressings, and other condiments. Germany is the second core importer. The report gives Germany's 2023 import value at about $40 million or 10% of global imports. Germany combines domestic consumption, food manufacturing, and European distribution. France is commercially important because of Dijon mustard and the broader French condiment industry. The report gives France's 2023 imports at about $24 million or 6% of global imports. France's demand is especially connected to brown mustard seed and the flavor profile required for Dijon-style products. Nepal is also significant, but for a very different reason. The report gives Nepal's 2023 imports at about $24 million also around 6% of global imports. Nepal's demand is not mainly about Western condiment manufacturing. It is structurally tied to edible oil and local food consumption. Bangladesh and Belgium also matter. Bangladesh's 2023 imports are reported at about $18 million or 5%. Belgium's imports are around $17 million or 4%. Bangladesh is an edible oil demand market. Belgium is more of a European processing and entry point market. The main importer lesson is that the same HS code serves different demand systems. The US, Germany, and France are industrial condiment and food processing markets. Nepal and Bangladesh are edible oil and food consumption markets. Belgium and the Netherlands act partly as European trade and logistics nodes. Trade corridors and logistics. Mustard seed trade is defined by a few major corridors. The Canada to United States corridor is the largest by value and represents the deeply integrated North American supply chain. The United States depends heavily on Canadian seed, and the proximity between Canadian growing regions and U.S. processors makes this corridor central. The Canada to Europe corridor is also important, especially for France, Germany, Belgium, and the Netherlands. This corridor feeds condiment industries and European food manufacturing. The Black Sea region has become more important as Russia and Ukraine gained export share. That gives importers another source, but it also introduces geopolitical and logistics risk. South Asian flows are different. Nepal and Bangladesh import seed for edible oil and food use. Regional suppliers, especially India, matter there, but global suppliers such as Canada, Russia, and Australia can also compete when local and regional supply is not enough. The logistics challenge is not only freight cost. It is timing, moisture protection, clean storage, grading, phytosanitary documents, and consistent supply. Price and PPU. The report treats price per unit as a central signal, but not as a live market quote. This distinction matters. PPU is calculated from trade value divided by quantity. It can reveal market tiers, scarcity, product mix, and quality positioning, but it blends varieties, origins, contract terms, shipping conditions, and grades. For mustard seed, PPU tells the story of the 2021 to 2022 shock. The world did not simply trade more mustard seed. The world paid much more for the seed that was available. The extreme rise above $2,600 per ton in 2022 is a signal of scarcity, inelastic demand, and supply concentration risk. For buyers, the right question is not only what is the price. The better question is why this origin, why this unit value, why this grade, and what risk is hidden inside the number. Sourcing risk. The biggest sourcing risk is climate concentration. The Canadian drought showed that a single weather event in a dominant region can reshape the entire global price structure. For importers, risk includes crop failure, origin concentration, price volatility, shipment delays, quality inconsistency, moisture problems, contamination, phytosanitary compliance, and changing origin mix. When supply tightens, buyers may have to accept different varieties or origins than they normally prefer. For exporters, risk looks different. Farmers must decide whether mustard is more attractive than competing crops such as canola, wheat, or pulses. Exporters must manage quality, grading, storage, logistics, buyer claims, and price movements after harvest. The report also shows that downstream demand is not uniform. A U.S. condiment processor, a French Dijon manufacturer, a German food company, a Nepalese oil crusher, and a Bangladeshi oil mill do not all need the same seed. The risk is not only whether mustard seed is available. The risk is whether the available seed fits the buyer's product. Market entry, North America. North America is a two-sided market. The United States is the demand engine. A supplier entering the U.S. market must think like a reliable ingredient supplier to industrial processors. The priorities are consistent quality, contract reliability, food safety, logistics, and compliance. The U.S. buyer is not looking for a story alone. It needs production continuity. Canada is different. Canada is the source. The opportunity is less about selling mustard seed into Canada and more about sourcing from Canada, investing in processing, or integrating into the Canadian production and export system. The report frames the Canadian opportunity around procurement, cleaning, grading, milling, deoiling, and agricultural technology or input services. The North American lesson is simple. Do not treat the US and Canada as the same market. One is the buyer. One is the supply engine. Market entry, Europe. Europe is a quality and compliance market. The report highlights specialized importers and traders as the recommended route for many new and medium-sized exporters. Traders in hubs such as Rotterdam and Hamburg can manage customs, logistics, risk, and access to processors. Direct supply to large industrial processors is possible, but it requires scale, reliable volumes, strict quality assurance, and long-term consistency. Niche and specialty channels also exist. Certified organic, single origin, high pungency, or specialty mustard seed can target artisanal condiment makers, organic distributors, and specialty ingredient buyers. European buyers care about variety and quality. Brown mustard matters for Dijon-style and pungent mustards. Yellow mustard matters for milder styles and emulsifying behavior. Black mustard is more niche. The exporter must match seed type to buyer use. Market entry, South Asia and Southeast Asia. South Asia is not mainly a condiment story. It is an edible oil story. Nepal is described as a structurally import-dependent market. Its domestic production is not enough to meet demand, so it needs steady imported supply for oil crushing and food consumption. Bangladesh is even larger. The report describes Bangladesh as a gigamarket for edible oil, with total supply often approaching or exceeding 1 million tons per year. Domestic production is substantial but insufficient, so imports remain structurally important. In these markets, the strategy is volume, price competitiveness, quality for oil content and purity, and logistical reliability. The buyer is often an oil crusher, not a condiment manufacturer. Broader Southeast Asia is different. Mustard oil is not a staple in the same way because palm, coconut, and soybean oils dominate. Opportunities are more niche. Diaspora markets, specialty food distributors, restaurants, food manufacturers, and health-positioned oils. Buyer scenario. Imagine 3 buyers looking at the same HS code. The first buyer is a U.S. condiment processor. It needs reliable seed supply, predictable specifications, and contracts that protect production schedules. Canada may be the natural supplier, but the supply shock forces the buyer to consider diversification. The second buyer is a French mustard manufacturer. It cares about brown mustard, pungency, quality, and the product profile needed for Dijon-style output. It may buy through European traders, but the origin and variety still matter. The third buyer is an oil mill in Nepal or Bangladesh. It is less focused on a premium condiment story and more focused on raw material for edible oil. Price, volume, oil content, purity, and port logistics are central. These buyers are all inside the mustard seed market, but they are not really buying the same commercial solution. Exporter scenario. Now look from the exporter side. A Canadian exporter has scale, grading standards, and trust, but also faces climate exposure and acreage competition. A Russian exporter may offer alternative supply and price competition, but buyers must assess logistics and geopolitical risk. An Indian exporter can serve brown mustard and regional demand, but export availability may depend on domestic supply and policy conditions. A German exporter or trader may offer European access and re-export capability rather than primary production. A U.S. supplier may serve niche or surplus opportunities, while its own domestic industry absorbs much of the supply. The winning exporter is not simply the one with seed. The winning exporter is the one whose seed type, quality proof, logistics, contract reliability, and buyer channel fit the destination. Final takeaway. Mustard seed looks small, but HS120750 sits at the intersection of food culture, industrial processing, oilseed economics, and climate risk. The product can become prepared mustard, mustard flour, mustard oil, spice, or feed-linked co-products, but the trade code itself focuses on the raw seed. That makes it a useful window into the upstream market before value is added downstream. The strongest lesson from the report is that concentration creates risk. For many years, Canada gave the market stability. Then the 2021 drought showed what happens when global buyers depend too heavily on one production region. Russia and India gained importance, but diversification is not automatic. Each origin brings its own product type, logistics, quality, and risk profile. For Merit Gateway, the opportunity is to read this market in layers: product form, seed type, end use, exporter role, importer function, price signal, and market entry channel. Mustard seed is not just a condiment ingredient. It is a supply chain test case for how agricultural commodities behave when stable demand meets unstable climate-sensitive supply. For more report-based trade breakdowns, visit meritgateway.com.